In today's show, I'm looking at Week 13 in the fantasy basketball season. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. We're heading into Week 13. The fantasy playoffs are getting close. The end of Roto seasons is getting closer. The NBA trade deadline is coming up this week. The fantasy basketball trade deadline is coming up this week for a lot of leagues as well. So, let's look at Week 13, which is Week 14 in the real NBA, but it's Week 13 in fantasy basketball. Let's take a look at how the schedule plays out. We have 18 teams playing 4 games and 12 teams playing 3 games. These teams play 3. The Knicks, Mavericks, Thunder, Pistons, Heat, Pacers, Warriors, Bulls, Nets, Pelicans, Sixers, and Wizards. The rest of the teams in the NBA play 4 games this week. So no 5-game weeks, no 2-game weeks. At this point, it was obviously going to be no 5-game weeks, but there's no 2-game weeks yet. Hopefully nobody gets their games postponed or anything along those lines. But that is how our current setup looks for this week with those teams playing those 3 games. Of course, the teams that I didn't mention, they are playing 4 games this week. So let's have a look at how things break down a little bit more closely. The week's schedule, it's an interesting one. 8 games on Monday, 6 on Tuesday, a big 11-game Wednesday, 5-game Thursday, another absolute monster 11-game Friday, and then 9 on Saturday. That's 20 games in 2 days. That's a lot. And then we finish off with a very, very small 4-game Sunday slate. So we've got 4 streaming target days: Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Really tough to stream on a Wednesday, really tough to stream on a Friday. You might be able to do it on a Saturday, but probably not. So we're really going to be focusing in on those Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday days in terms of streaming. If your league has 4 games or 4 waiver ads, you can add 1 player each day, but we're going to talk about ways that you can maximize your games played by getting a couple of extra blokes in to get those games played up for the week. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, in terms of teams who have value for streaming, or the most value for streaming, the best teams we're looking at are the Lakers and the Blazers. They have 3 games that fall on those low volume days. So your Gary Trents, Carmelo Anthony's, Enes Kanter is not really a stream guy, but he might get dropped awaiting Yusuf Nurkic's return, and then you stream him in for these games. Well, it's a terrible example. Rodney Hood in deeper leagues. Derek Jones Jr. when you're looking for deeper or for defensive stats, like there's stream value. For the Lakers, well, who knows what's going on, because LeBron injured himself on Sunday. Is LeBron going to play? Not on Sunday, on Saturday, sorry. Is he going to play Sunday? Is he going to play during the week? Are we going to have massive Kyle Kuzma value, who's a rosterable guy anyway? Are we going to have Taylor Horton Tucker fire all the way up? Is it going to be massive gains from Harrell and Schroeder? They're already rostered players, but who's going to step up? KCP? I think Horton Tucker's the guy we want to watch for there, and if LeBron has to take a week off, 3 quality games of THT, it's pretty interesting. The Mavericks, on the other hand, 0 quality games. So if you added your Josh Richardsons, if you added your Tim Hardaways, if you even have like a Maxi Kleber, an honest appraisal of your roster would tell you almost definitely that they are the worst player on your roster unless you're in a 16-team league. So if you're in a 12-team and you've got Richardson, you've got Hardaway, you've got Kleber, you've got Brunson, they are the worst player on your roster, and you're going to be able to use them for 0 games this week. The worst player on your roster is a streamable spot, and especially this week with 0 games, move on from them. The value they hold long-term is not worth it, where you could use that roster spot to maybe get 5 or 6 extra games in. That is a huge, huge difference. And if you are in a spot where you're fighting for playoffs, fighting for seeding, 6 extra games, and I'll tell you how when you get to 6 extra games in a second, but 6 extra games is massive. It's absolutely key. So those Mavericks guys, again, you most likely won't be able to get any games out of those fringe guys. Now, of course, you'll still play Luka, you'll still play Kristaps Porzingis on those days, but you won't play your Klebers, your Finney Smiths, because he'll return Hardaways and Richardsons, Cauley Stein in deeper leagues, Brunsons. You just won't play those guys. So that their ability, or your ability to open up that roster spot, is absolutely there. Let's look at back-to-backs. 25 teams have a back-to-back, including a back-to-back heading into the week, so the Sunday-Monday back-to-back. So we've got 5 teams who don't have one. The Knicks, the Hornets, the Hawks, the Wizards, and the Sixers don't have a back-to-back at all. So that's pretty good news in terms of if there was anyone going to rest there. But the problem is you look at those teams and there's no real rest candidates. The issue you have is that 4 teams play 2 games, and 2 of those teams have a lot of rest guys on them, or have significant rest guys on them. The Houston Rockets have 2 back-to-backs, including the Sunday, Monday heading into the week. And we've got, the Toronto Raptors do the same thing. The Boston Celtics do the same thing, and the Cleveland Cavaliers do the same thing. So with the Rockets, Oladipo, there's a chance that with his games this week, they have the Friday, Saturday back-to-back, so he misses one there, and then they have Sunday, Monday back-to-back. Does he miss the Monday game there? Meaning you get 2 games out of Victor Oladipo. If John Wall returns, is he playing all 4 games next week? Almost definitely not. So watch for those guys in a weekly setting, but it also opens up stream value there. And for Boston, well, Kemba Walker. We know what Kemba Walker's situation is for back-to-backs. So they've got a Sunday, Monday back-to-back heading into week, and then a Friday, Saturday, the same as the Rockets. So you're going to play 2 games of Kemba, most likely? That's going to make him pretty tough, but it's also going to boost some value of some other players, perhaps. So that is worth looking at. Everybody else that I haven't mentioned there, I've mentioned the teams who have 0, mentioned the teams that have 2. Everybody else has 1 back-to-back. So that's 1 back-to-back when we look at the Thunder, who actually resting doesn't even seem to have anything to do with back-to-backs for the Thunder at the moment. They're just resting blokes willy-nilly. And this is why, and I'm recording this before Saturday's game, this is why I said, hey, 1 game from Moses Brown, let's hold on and let's see what happens. And then the very next game, Al Horford's sitting out. So I think that was why, well, not I think that is exactly why I said just hold on to Moses Brown and let's see what happens with this Horford scenario. The Thunder had that 1 back-to-back during the week. The Nets have a back-to-back, so Blake Griffin's going to be returning to action, but is he going to play that back-to-back? I don't think we get Kevin Durant back, but that's something for us to pay attention to. Next up, looking at streaming. Unfortunately, Monday, Tuesday, which is a great opportunity to stream guys in low-volume days, no teams have a back-to-back. That's disappointing. So in terms of using our acquisitions for the week, we use someone to add on Monday. So you've got the teams playing Monday. You've got the Rockets. You've got the Timberwolves, the Celtics, the Jazz, the Kings, the Cavs, the Hornets, the Hawks, the Spurs, the Raptors, the Clippers, the Timberwolves, the Grizzlies, the Thunder, the Pacers, and the Bulls all have games on Monday. So you can stream someone from there, but you can't get any back-to-backs. But what you need to do is you need to look at the back-to-back or the pseudo-back-to-back surrounding that 11-game Wednesday. So adding someone on Tuesday who also plays Thursday to get the bang for your buck. And the teams that do that, and there's a lot of them, the Lakers, Knicks, Heat, Warriors, Sixers, Wizards. So Lakers we talked about already. Taylor Horton-Tucker is going to be a pretty strong ad, but Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Markieff Morris in that scenario. The Knicks, whichever point guards are actually healthy, they're going to be stream options. What happens with Mitchell Robinson, who's returning? What does that mean for Nerlens Noel? Can we stream him on those days? Reggie Bullock, Alec Burks, options there as well. The Heat, Goran Dragic, if he was dropped, which was a fair enough decision. Trevor Ariza, perhaps, if his minutes are up. Kelly Olynyk, if he hasn't been rostered. The Warriors, who knows if Steph Curry is going to be back. We know that every single center on their roster's out, so Juan Toscano Anderson's going to be an option. Jordan Poole, Nico Mannion, Brad Wanamaker, Damian Lee, Kent Bazemore. The Sixers, is Embiid going to be back? Almost definitely not. Shake Milton, Matisse Thybulle. Those sort of players. Dwight Howard, Tony Bradley. The Washington Wizards, Denny Avdia maybe, Rui Hachimura, Davis Bertans is out. There's going to be a shit ton of minutes for Rui in that situation. There's Obi's head popping up onto my video. Good morning, Obi. Other guys, Garrison Matthews in deeper leagues. And then Thursday, Sunday, that's a pseudo back-to-back with 2 high-volume games in the middle. It's the Lakers and the Blazers, teams we talked about earlier on, who have that nice high-volume value. So in terms of getting extra games, you've got 4 acquisitions for the week, right? So let's say you add someone for the Tuesday. Let's say you add a Lakers player on Tuesday, and then you've got 3 quality games from Tuesday onward. So you get 3 Lakers players through there. 3 games from 1 Lakers player on those days, whether that is a Taylor Horton Tucker or a Markieff Morris or a Kyle Kuzma. You can add that player there and get 3 games. That's 3 games from 1 acquisition. Right, you can also use a Thursday-Sunday acquisition from a Blazers player. Gary Trent, let's say that's who it is, Derek Jones Jr. That's 5 games from 2 acquisitions. So you've got 2 more acquisitions. Now, depending on how your roster looks and how many spots done, you can add another guy on the Tuesday here. You can add a Knicks player, a Heat player, a Warriors player, and get 2 bonus games from those guys. That's 7 games from 3 acquisitions. I actually undersold it before. I said you could get 6 extra games. That's 7 games from 3 acquisitions. And then you can either add another Portland guy here, or you can add one of these other guys, and you can get 9 extra games from 4 acquisitions this week. And that's by not using anyone on that Monday. So you don't have to add anyone on the Monday at all. You can just add a Lakers player on a Tuesday, and you can add either 2 more guys on a Tuesday, or you add a Blazers guy here on the Thursday, and you can get 9 extra games from that. That's like, you imagine Josh Richardson, you drop Josh Richardson and you turn it into 9 games. That's a possibility with 4 acquisitions. And that is why planning and schedule and streaming is so bloody important. That is massive. It's not always going to be as easy as that or as beneficial as that, but that is there. That opportunity is there for you to get. Now, of course, it might not work, and players might be dreadful in that time, or they might sit out some of those games. Who knows? But that is a way to plan yourself to get more playing time into your lineup. Let's go on to the next one. We're looking at front and back loading.
Giggity!
So we're looking at players or teams, who play a lot of games at the beginning of the week. The Kings, the Clippers, and the Spurs play 3 games in 4 nights to begin the week. So you can load up on your Marcus Morrises, your Nick Batums, Serge Ibaka, Ivica Zubac's, Reggie Jackson, Lou Williams. Kings guys, you're looking at, there's not much, Hassan Whiteside even in that scenario. God, that's embarrassing. Corey Joseph, the Spurs guys. Yeah, Keldon Johnson, I'm sure everyone's re-added him, but you look at Rudy Gay, Pat Mills when he returns from his rest. But then at the start of the week, Dallas guys, Detroit guys, Pelicans guys, they play 1 game in the first 4 nights. So your fringe guys, if you're still holding on to Steven Adams or Eric Bledsoe, you probably don't want to. Back end of the week, 3 games in 4 nights from Thursday to Sunday. The Lakers and the Blazers, we've talked about them ad nauseum, but the Bulls, Nets, Pacers, Thunder have 1 game to end the week. So if you did add someone from the Thunder, like an Alexei Pokusevski, like a Saltflake Theo Maledon, like a Ty Jerome, you get 1 game out of the last 4 nights. Now, I wouldn't say their upside is high enough that you have to hold on in every situation. So you might want to move on from one of those guys to get those extra games in through that Thursday to Sunday period. Let's look at some guys. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. The way that the week pans out and the way that roster percentage shakes out, there's not that many great options out there to add who are rostered in under 70% of weekly or in advanced leagues who can be guys that you can add for weekly leagues and be useful. But I'm looking at a couple of Phoenix Suns players. They got 4 games this week. Jay Crowder, Dario Saric. Maybe you could add them and start them. Paul Millsap from the Nuggets and Marcus Morris from the Clippers. I don't love those guys as great must-add players, but they could be options, especially Crowder with the 4 games who could be an option for you. In terms of players to sit in category leagues, well, we've talked about how Steven Adams is a drop anyway. We've talked about how Wendell Carter Jr. is probably a drop, but he's definitely a sit this week. Spoken about Tim Hardaway as being a drop given that Mavericks schedule and given the fact that he's not that good, but he has been rostered in a ton of leagues, so he's someone to at least sit at the very least in weekly leagues. And then Kemba Walker with only 2 games. Yeah, not great. For points leagues, we're looking at, again, very similar. Like, I'm not loving some of these options. Like Kenyon Martin, maybe with 4 games, and maybe now with a Kevin Porter injury. We don't know how long that's going to keep him out. And maybe with Victor Oladipo sitting out 2 of these games this week and John Wall missing some time, you can add Kenyon Martin and Jayshawn Tate for points leagues. DeAnthony Melton's got 4 games for the Grizzlies, even though I don't trust Taylor Jenkins.
No question about it. I am ready to get hurt again.
And then you got his mate, your mate, my mate, Dylan Brooksy Brooks, who is atrocious, but They keep giving him opportunities. I don't know if they give him the shots, if he just steals them, but he's going to take those shots, so he's an option there as well. And if we're looking at players to sit in points leagues, Mitchell Robinson's going to return, but I wouldn't want to use him first game up, only 3 games, maybe limited minutes. Wendell Carter Jr., Kemba Walker, and Steven Adams as options that we've already mentioned. If we look at some players who should be returning this week, Seth Curry will probably come back after missing a couple of games. Malik Beasley's suspension ends this week. At the very end of the week, but it still ends this week. So just be aware of that if Malik is floating on your waiver wire, you add him because he is back this week. Hamidou Diallo is going to come back most likely towards the end of this week, and same with DeAndre Hunter of the Atlanta Hawks. Hopefully, we get Hunter back this week as well. Guys, that'll do it for me today. Don't forget to subscribe Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on YouTube. Hey, guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.